You know, um, you know that really specific kind of heartbreak that I think only tech people truly understand?
Oh, the upgrade paradox.
Yes, exactly that, the upgrade paradox. You go out, you spend entirely too much good money on a top-tier, ultra-modern router. You're fully expecting to live in this futuristic utopia of gigabit speeds where loading bars are just a thing of the past.
Right, you get the box with all the antennas.
Yeah, looking like a spaceship. And you set it all up, the LEDs are blinking a happy green, and you think you're done. But then one single stubborn device in your house just completely refuses to cooperate.
It is the absolute classic networking law. I mean, the chain is really only as strong as its weakest, oldest link. And usually, that link is some $5 part you completely forgot you even owned.
Exactly. And the immediate human reaction is usually just to blame the expensive new thing you just bought. But today, we're unpacking a really fantastic troubleshooting log for this deep dive that kind of flips that whole script.
It really does.
We're looking at a blog post from kiameng.org. It's titled Notes on Networking Part 7.
And this isn't just your standard, how to fix it guide you find on a forum. The author, Ang, actually describes himself as an old software plumber.
I love that term.
Right. And that mindset is exactly what we're really analyzing today. Because this is practically a masterclass in how to stop guessing and start actually diagnosing.
Software plumber. It implies that things are messy, pipes get clogged, and you really have to get your hands dirty to find the leak.
You have to look at the flow.
Yeah. So our mission for this deep dive is to walk through his entire detective process. We're going to cover how to use command line tools to visualize totally invisible network traffic.
Which is crucial.
We're also going to get into the physics, the actual thermodynamics of tiny hardware, which honestly gets surprisingly dramatic. And finally, the brutal reality of legacy tech clashing with modern standards.
Yeah, because the problem he faces one I think a lot of us just ignore. We buy the new router, and when an old device starts acting up, we just immediately blame our ISP or the cloud. Ain didn't do that. He actually dug in.
So let's set the scene here. It's the post-upgrade hangover. Ang has deprecated his old router, he's installed the shiny new hardware, and for the most part, his digital life is good. Except for one specific machine.
The outlier. It's a desktop machine that is relying on a Wi-Fi adapter that, honestly, it belongs in a museum at this point.
What was the model again?
It's a nano USB adapter running the Realtek RTL8188CUS chipset.
Realtek 8188. I feel like I've seen that exact chipset in everything from early Raspberry Pis to cheap knockoff smart plugs. It's totally ubiquitous, but man, it is old.
Oh, it's pure legacy tech. And the symptom he experienced was immediate. He wasn't just getting, slightly slower speeds. The connection was completely abyssal.
Now, normally, this is where the average user just stops, right? You try to load a web page, it times out, and you say to yourself, well, the internet feels slow today.
Which is arguably the most useless sentence in IT. Because feels slow is entirely subjective. You can't fix a feeling. You need actual metrics. And this is the first major insight from the source material we're looking at. Ang immediately bypasses the web browser. He doesn't go to a random speed test website.
That is such a critical distinction, and I really want to pause on that for you listening, because if you run a browser speed test, you aren't actually testing your local network. You're testing your modem, your ISP, the local routing node down the street, the fiber backbone, and whatever server is sitting on the other end.
It's way too noisy.
Yeah, that is way too many variables if you're literally just trying to figure out why your computer can't talk to the router in the next room.
Precisely. He needed to test the air between his computer and his router, nothing else. So he spins up a tool called iperf3.
Now, I've used iperf a few times, but usually I just, I copy-paste commands I find on Reddit without really getting what's happening under the hood. For everyone who hasn't used it, how does this tool actually isolate the problem?
It's brilliant in its simplicity. Think of iperf3 as a pressure test for your digital pipes. It requires two machines on the same local network. You set one up as the server.
Okay.
And it just sits there, listening on a specific port. It's essentially opening up a bucket to catch water.
And that's the iperf3-s command, right? Just S for server. Simple enough.
Right. Then, on the problem machine, the one with the ancient Realtek adapter, you run the client command, which is iperf3-c. This tells the client to generate synthetic data.
Like fake data.
Yeah, just random junk data. And it blasts it at the server as absolutely fast as it possibly can.
Oh, I see. So it completely eliminates the hard drive speed because it's not trying to read or write actual files.
Yep.
It eliminates the internet connection because it's entirely local. And it eliminates browser rendering lag. It is just pure, raw network throughput.
Pure pipe capacity. Now, before he even hit enter, Ang did what every good engineer does. He established a baseline expectation. He looked up the specs for that old Realtek adapter. The theoretical maximum is 150 megabits per second.
Which we all know is a complete fantasy number printed on the side of the box.
Oh, absolutely.
That's like the speedometer on a budget sedan saying it can do 200 miles per hour. It's just not happening.
It's optimistic, to say the very least.
Mm-hmm.
In the real world, dealing with network overhead, distance, maybe a wall or two, he was expecting something around 30 to 60 megabits per second. That's a highly usable standard connection for that older 802.11n hardware. You can easily stream HD video on that.
Okay, so 30 is the absolute floor. He expects 30. He runs the test. And the numbers that actually came back in the logs, they weren't just low. They were, frankly, insulting.
They were catastrophic. The center byte rate, so how fast the computer could actually push data out of the adapter, was 419 kilobits per second.
Oof, that is less than half a megabit.
And the receiver side was somehow even worse, 201 kilobits per second.
Wow. That's barely functional. That's late 1990s dial-up territory right there. You couldn't even stream a low-quality audio feed at that speed. You'd be buffering every 3 or 4 seconds.
It's effectively a broken connection. But here is where that software plumber mentality really shines. He didn't just look at the raw speed, because speed is just a symptom. He looked at the stability metrics in the log to find the actual disease. And it's specifically focused on a column labeled ref.
Retransmissions. Okay, this is a concept that I think is so incredibly important to grasp if you want to understand why a network sometimes feels laggy versus just feeling slow.
It's absolutely fundamental to TCP, the transmission control protocol. TCP is designed to be reliable above all else. When my computer sends your computer a packet of data, I don't just throw it over the fence and hope you get it. I wait for you to send me a tiny little receipt back that says, got it.
The ACK, the acknowledgement.
Exactly.
It's basically a conversation. Like, I say something to you, you nod your head. If I say something and you just stare at me blankly, I'm going to assume you didn't hear me over the background noise.
And what do you do naturally in that situation? You repeat yourself. That is a retransmission. The iperf3 logs showed that Ang's adapter was retransmitting 17 times in a single 1-second interval.
17 times a second. That's just frantic.
It is. Imagine trying to talk to someone and having to repeat every third word 17 times before they nod. The conversation doesn't just slow down, it practically stops. The computer is spending way more time shouting, "Did you hear me?" than it is actually saying anything new.
And that perfectly explains the user experience he was describing. It's not a smooth, gradual slowdown. It's burst, freeze, burst, freeze.
The logs completely confirmed this. There were intervals where the transfer rate dropped to absolute zero, literally 0.00 bits per second. The connection was just flatlining.
So diagnosis phase 1 is complete. It's not the ISP, it's not the remote server. The local Wi-Fi link is literally collapsing. The packets are leaving the computer but just getting lost in the ether before they ever hit the router.
Or the router is receiving them fine, but the acknowledgement isn't making it back through the noise. Either way, it's a total breakdown of the handshake. So, faced with this undeniable data, Ang does the most human thing possible.
I know this one. He turned it off and on again.
The classic IT crowd maneuver. He physically unplugged the little USB adapter, waited a moment, and just plugged it back in.
Okay, honest question from me. Does that ever actually fix deep-rooted networking issues? Or are we all just doing it to make ourselves feel better?
Rarely does it fix it permanently.
Yeah.
But it does reset the state of the hardware. It clears the memory buffers, it forces the driver to renegotiate the connection, and it drains any residual electrical charge. And in this specific case, it did something.
The notes say it yielded a marginal improvement.
Right. The byte rate jumped up to about 5.24 megabits per second, and crucially, those retransmissions dropped to 0, so all that frantic shouting just stopped.
Okay, 5 megabits is still way below the 30 megabit target, but at least traffic is finally moving. However, Ang noticed something else in those logs that really bothered him. Even though the retransmissions stopped, the silence didn't.
Correct. He was still seeing these intervals of 0.00 throughput. The connection would work for a second, then gasp for air, then work again. And this observation led him to look at a very specific, often completely overlooked metric in the logs called the CROWD.
The congestion window. Now, this sounds like really obscure tech jargon, but it's actually a beautiful, elegant concept once you get it. How do we explain this simply for the listener?
Think of the congestion window as a dynamic trust metric between the two devices. When a connection first starts, the computer is cautious. It sends a little bit of data, say just 10 packets. If those get acknowledged quickly and cleanly, the computer says, great, the road is clear, and it widens the window. Next time it sends 20, then 40.
Oh, so it actively tests the limits of the pipe. It keeps expanding that window, sending more and more until a packet finally drops, and then it knows the limit and pulls back slightly. It's almost like a breathing mechanism. It's constantly finding the sweet spot.
Exactly. It should be highly dynamic. You should continuously fluctuate up and down as local network conditions change. But Ang noticed that his congestion window was completely flat.
It was just stuck.
Stuck at roughly 100 kilobytes. It wasn't breathing. It wasn't even trying to go faster.
So the software, or maybe the firmware on the chip, has basically slapped a governor on the engine. It's actively saying, I refuse to go faster than 5 miles per hour, no matter how clear the road is.
And that implies a bottleneck that isn't just about signal strength or Wi-Fi noise. It strongly suggests the hardware itself is struggling to physically process the data. It's too scared to take on any more work. And that is exactly when the physical reality hit him.
Literally hit his hand. Because when he touched the adapter during that replug reset, he noticed something really alarming.
It was burning hot.
Now, we need to picture this. We are talking about a nano adapter. For you listening, these are those tiny little nubs. They are barely larger than the metal USB plug itself. You plug them into a laptop or desktop, and they almost entirely vanish into the port.
They're designed entirely for aesthetics, not physics. We love them because they don't stick out. You don't snap them off when you put your laptop in a bag. But that sleekness is absolutely their fatal flaw. Eng points out in the notes that these devices have effectively zero surface area for heat dissipation.
Right, there's no metal heatsink, there's no airflow vents. It's just a networking chip encased in tight plastic shoved directly into a powered port.
And electronics fundamentally hate heat. When a processor, even a really simple network controller chip, gets too hot, it engages thermal throttling. It deliberately slows down its internal clock cycles to generate less heat, basically trying to save itself from literally melt out of a plastic.
So those 0000 silent gaps in the iperf log, that wasn't the network failing at all. That was the chip gasping for air.
Effectively, yes. It was taking a mandatory break to cool down. It's the hardware equivalent of a runner bending over with their hands on their knees, just trying to catch their breath. That flat congestion window we talked about was the driver software screaming, don't give me any more data. I can't even process what I already have because I'm cooking in here.
This is such a fantastic reminder that the cloud and Wi-Fi and the internet, it all runs on physical, tangible hardware. We get so caught up in software configurations, IP addresses, and driver updates that we completely forget about basic thermodynamics. If the chick is cooking, the code doesn't matter.
And the physical location he had it in made it so much worse. He had this burning hot little ember plugged into the rear I/O panel of his desktop tower.
Which is arguably the worst possible place for a Wi-Fi adapter. It's literally behind a giant metal box, the PC case itself, which acts as a Faraday shield blocking the router signal. Plus, it's usually shoved against a wall or under a desk, so there's absolutely zero airflow, and it's surrounded by a rat's nest of other powered cables.
And Eng specifically noted in his write-up that there was another USB dongle plugged in right next to it for his wireless keyboard and mouse.
So we have radio interference plus a physical heat trap.
It's the perfect storm for terrible performance. The 2.4 gigahertz frequency used by that mouse dongle overlaps directly with the older Wi-Fi band. So the network adapter is constantly screaming over the radio noise of the mouse, working twice as hard to distinguish the actual internet signal, which obviously generates even more heat, which it can't get rid of because it's stuck behind a metal computer case.
So the fix here isn't a magical command line parameter. It's not a registry edit or a driver update. It's literally moving the furniture.
Simple physics. He physically moved the adapter from the back of the case to the front panel USB port.
And the immediate benefits are obvious. It's out from behind the metal shield. It's physically away from the mouse dongle interference. And it's out in the open air of the room.
And the data logs confirmed it instantly. He ran iperf3 again. The silence completely vanished. No more .000 dropouts. The connection finally became stable.
That is deeply satisfying. You know, you validated the problem with real data, you identified the physical cause, and you mitigated it with a physical change. But there's a twist here. We aren't quite out of the woods yet.
No. And this is the sad trombone moment of the whole blog post.
Because even though the connection was stable, meaning no crashing, no freezing, the speed topped out at 7.02 megabits per second.
7. And remember, our baseline target was 30 to 60.
Yeah.
So we are running at maybe 15% efficiency at best.
So we fixed the crashing, but we didn't fix the slowness. Why? If the heat is gone and the radio interference is gone, why is the brand new expensive router still treating this adapter like a second-class citizen?
This brings us squarely to the legacy tech trap.
Yeah.
Ang concludes that the root cause at this point is simply the sheer age of the chipset. That Realtek RTL8180 CUAS is ancient in internet years.
It's basically like trying to drive a Model T Ford on the Autobahn.
That's a really good analogy. Modern routers, especially Wi-Fi 6 or 6E models, they're designed from the ground up for high-efficiency throughput. They use aggressive modulation schemes, complex beamforming, and airtime Ferrez protocols. They fully expect the client devices to speak that same fast, dense language.
And the little Realtek chip is just sitting there going, I literally don't know what any of these words mean.
Worse than that,
Yeah.
it actually drags the modern router down with it.
Hmm.
The router has to deliberately slow down its signaling rate to communicate with this legacy device. It takes much longer to send the exact same amount of data. This is a concept we call airtime hogging. The old device stays on the radio airwaves longer, just to say less, which makes the router work harder and ties up the frequency.
So the router's probably actively deprioritizing it, or the older chipset is just maxing out its tiny internal CPU trying to interpret the modern signal at all.
Exactly. The protocols are technically backward compatible, meaning they can form a connection and talk, but practically speaking, they are incompatible. The computational overhead required to bridge that huge generation gap is just too high. The translation layer is eating up all the actual speed.
So Ang is left with a choice here, a fork in the road. Option 1, you log into the admin panel of your shiny new router, you dig through the menus, you find the legacy mode or compatibility mode switch, and you turn off all the fancy new features.
Which fixes the connection for the old dongle, sure, but it actively penalizes every single other device in the house. You're literally slowing down your new laptop, your smartphone, and your 4K TV just to accommodate a $10 USB nub.
You're optimizing your entire network for the absolute weakest link, which just feels fundamentally wrong.
It is wrong. It's terrible networking practice.
So option 2, retirement.
The old Yeller solution. You just have to accept that the hardware has served its purpose. Its watch has ended. Ang actually says in his notes, I'm more keen on the latter option.
It's hard to do, though. I think literally every tech person listening has that one drawer in their house. You know the exact drawer I'm talking about. Tangled USB cables, old Bluetooth dongles, a spinning hard drive from 2011. We absolutely hate throwing things away that technically still turn on. We always think, oh, I'll definitely use this for a weird Raspberry Pi project someday.
I do. We're all guilty of it. But we really have to look at the total cost of ownership. It's not just the financial cost of the replacement hardware. It's the cost of your time spent troubleshooting. It's the energy and efficiency of a chip that runs burning hot just to push 7 measly megabits.
That's a really great point. Efficiency isn't just about data speed. It's about energy and thermal overhead. A modern Wi-Fi 6 adapter would transfer that exact same amount of data in a fraction of a millisecond and immediately go back to sleep using almost zero power. This old adapter is churning and burning, wasting electricity just to stay connected.
So the truly sustainable choice, ironically enough, might actually be to create a tiny little bit of e-waste right now in exchange for a much more energy-efficient daily operation going forward.
I think that's definitely the right call. But I really appreciate that Ang didn't just toss it in the bin immediately when it first started acting up. Because if he had just bought a new one on day one, he never would have learned about the thermal throttling issue on nano adapters.
And neither would we. The real value was in the troubleshooting journey itself. Now, next time he buys an adapter, even a brand new modern one, he knows fundamentally, don't plug it into the back panel behind the metal. Give it air to breathe.
That underlying knowledge transfers even if the hardware itself doesn't.
Precisely. It demonstrates a really solid, professional troubleshooting methodology. Validate the problem with actual data using iperf3. Isolate the specific variables like heat and radio interference. Mitigate the immediate physical cause by moving the port. And then finally evaluate the end result and decide, is this actually worth keeping?
Validate, isolate, mitigate, evaluate. I really like that. VIME. We might need to workshop the acronym.
Yeah, we'll workshop it. But the biggest practical takeaway for me today is iperf3. I genuinely think everyone listening should try running this. If you have a room in your house where the Wi-Fi always sucks, don't just guess at the problem. Run a local data test.
It completely separates the signal from the noise. If your iperf3 test is blazing fast but Netflix is still buffering, then you know it's time to call your ISP. But if iperf3 is slow, the problem is inside the house. You own it.
And seriously, check your physical dongles for heat. I can almost guarantee you have a device somewhere in your house right now that is quietly thermal throttling because it's shoved in a dusty corner with zero airflow.
I am absolutely going to be touching all my electronics as soon as we finish this deep dive. That sounded kind of weird, but you know what I mean.
Just please be careful.
Right, safety first.
Mhm.
But seriously, looking at the source material really highlighted the totally invisible friction between old and new tech. We all want everything to just work, but under the hood, it's this constant, messy struggle of changing protocols, physical limitations, and compatibility layers.
People think networking is magic, but it's really just plumbing and engineering, and all engineering has limits.
So here's a thought to leave you with as we wrap up. We talked a lot about retiring that old hardware today. In a world where we are increasingly trying to be more sustainable, where the right to repair is becoming this massive global movement, where do we actually draw the line?
That is the big question, isn't it?
Exactly. When does saving an old piece of tech actually cross over into wasting energy, bandwidth, and our own time? Is there a tipping point where demanding backwards compatibility is actually holding all of us back from a cleaner, more efficient future?
I think Aang definitely found his tipping point at exactly 7 megabits per second.
I think I would too. Aang, if you're out there listening, enjoy the new router. And really, thanks for taking the notes.
Stay curious, everyone. Keep checking your logs.
Catch you in the next deep dive. Bye!